Volkswagen's China problem? China
in 1983 was the version of China that made its transformation into what it is today so very remarkable. That's to say, it was poor and it was underdeveloped. Its GDP per capita was $302, making for a ranking of 161st in the world, below the Central African Republic, Uganda, and the Comoros. This made the country rather unattractive as an expansion market for multinational enterprises. The population was massive, sure, but it didn't have a whole lot more going for it from the perspective of corporate executives. And ultimately, even if companies wanted to enter the Chinese market, for the longest time they just simply couldn't. It was one of the most closed-off economies in the world. It was a centrally planned socialist economy, incompatible with the capitalist ones from the West, and there were barely even diplomatic relations with Europe and America, let alone economic ones.
Dude, I was listening to might have been FT podcast. They were talking about, they had an expert on senior people in the Russian and Chinese military. Some guy who knew a lot about Russian and Chinese relations and Sino-Russian relations. And he basically said how funny it is that, like, if you were to, he said, like, if you were talking to them honestly, like if you got somebody, you know, a few shots, a couple beers late night, and we're talking honestly, the senior people in the older people in the Chinese military, the senior leaders, the generals, would talk about how fucking funny it is that they used to be the little bro to Russia for so many decades, and now Russia is so little bro to them. It's like they derive deep personal pride from the fact that in their lifetimes, Russia went from the big dog, who like they had to like run everything by and be like, to being absolutely the little bro, to being like really reliant on China, to be honest. Like if China doesn't buy Russian oil, the sanctions would be a problem. So it's funny. It's a funny dynamic where China is absolutely the big dog of the partnership.
World. It was a centrally planned socialist economy, incompatible with the capitalist ones from the West, and there were barely even diplomatic relations with Europe and America, let alone economic ones. So it's no surprise that, before the 1980s, no Western auto manufacturer had entered the Chinese market. Change started after Deng Xiaoping took power. He kicked off the process.
The GOAT! Deng Xiaoping is the GOAT. And I understand that with all world leaders, there'll be criticism. And I'm sure there is things he did that I wouldn't personally do or agree with. But Deng Xiaoping, on like a number of people pulled out of poverty in terms of turning a country around financially, in terms of growth, in terms of people being richer than their parents, like in all of human history, nobody's done more than Deng Xiaoping. Maybe he might be like on a pure numbers basis, one of the greatest leaders in human history. Many things flawed, I'm sure, as with all world leaders, but kind of insane what he did with China. 10% plus growth rates every year for decades is crazy.
Process of economic reform, leading to the process of opening up, leading to the Chinese government inviting a few Western auto manufacturers to form joint ventures with Chinese car companies, leading to the first Chinese-made Volkswagen rolling off the line in Shanghai in 1983. This was...
Xi Jinping is the opposite, by the way. Just to be clear. Xi Jinping is like the opposite of Deng, and he's doing like all of the things that are basically undoing what made China so powerful under Deng. I'm a big Xi Jinping is actually kind of blowing it truther. Like, I think it's almost impossible for China to not be the world's #1 dominant economy, and Xi Jinping is doing his best to make it the case. Think about your trip. Dude, you guys relax with the social credit meme. It's not even fucking real.
Fortuitous. VW had been coaxed into forming a joint venture with the Shanghai Automotive Industry Corporation, and it happened at the absolute perfect moment. These same economic reforms that made it possible for VW to enter the market kicked off the transformation into the middle-income behemoth China is today, and as disposable incomes grew and the Chinese middle class expanded, so too did the country's car sales. Since then, more so than any Western auto company, VW has thrived on China sales. In fact, by the early 2000s, the country accounted for half of their global profit. It was the group's single largest market. Manufacturing costs were cheap, sales were numerous, and profit margins were enormous. At least until recently. For decades, total sales in China were rising while the group's market share largely held steady. In 2019, sales hit nearly 4 million units, but then the bottom fell out. COVID can explain these years, sure, but not these ones, as VW has struggled to hit 3 million unit sales, and in the first 3 quarters of 2024 only mustered 2 million. Across the 39 VW Group factories in China, earnings are down about 50% from the high set in 2015, while it's looking even worse for certain brands within the group. Skoda, a Czech—
Dude, it's not just VW. I mean, we could watch this video, but it's fucking crazy. For a while, Chinese people wanted foreign brands, but now they see Chinese cars as superior, so they don't even want foreign brands. And they're starting to buy, other cars, and these cars are falling off to the point where Audi is making cars in China and taking their logo off of it. Audi is removing their logo from fucking cars to sell it in China. They're rebranding with a local Chinese company. That's how fucking crazy it's getting.
Czech automaker owned by VW since 1991 has watched its sales absolutely tank across the 2020s. A disaster for a brand that's tailored designs and even entire models specifically to appeal to the Chinese consumer. But what makes this a true crisis for the world's largest auto company is that things are bad beyond China too. This factory in Brussels, Belgium has been building Volkswagen since the 1950s and Audi since 2006. But now, on account of slumping Audi Q8 e-tron sales, VW has announced the factory will close its doors at the end of February 2025. Without a viable buyer for the factory, thousands of jobs are set to vanish entirely. It likely won't be the last plant to close either, as Volkswagen announced that it would also potentially close 3 additional factories within Germany in an attempt at massive overhaul, something the company has simply never done.
Chinese cars quality is still probably bad long-term. Straight up cope, bro. You're going to have to come to terms with this sometime or another. I promise you. I don't know how to tell you this. You can prefer American cars. You can prefer German cars. And the best of the best from both countries is great. It's going to be a rude awakening, whether through investments or through reality. I don't know how to tell you this. The CEOs of all the car companies know it. The consumers that can buy both know it. The people trapped in countries that have Chinese EV tariffs don't know it yet. But it's real. Everywhere that people can buy both, Chinese cars the sales are growing year over year, massively. People that buy Teslas, the ones that are made in Shanghai have a higher build quality. You can go to Tesla owner forums, and they will try to get the ones made in Shanghai, the Shanghai factory, because the build quality is higher than the ones that are made in the other. So it's, Tesla owners literally prefer the Chinese build ones. It's not, if you over 3 decades outsource all of the world's manufacturing to one country, here's a surprise. That country gets good at manufacturing. I don't know how to explain it simpler than that. If all of the money and orders and factories go to one country, over time, they get good at it. It's not a fucking rocket science. And all of the batteries, you know what I'm saying? So if you're trying to believe otherwise, because you watch a fucking, who are those YouTubers? Dude, there's so many YouTubers that make money off just like poorly edited clips of China and wild wrong statements. I don't remember their names, but you can watch them. Mogul Mail, yeah, probably Mogul Mail. They will confirm your bias, but it will not hit reality. There's many economic problems in China. I've covered a lot of them. But car sales is not one of them. Their car sales are up year over year over year. They're knocking, I think they might have passed Japan. They already passed Germany. They're either number 2 or number 1.
Done in its home country. All this, the massive slump in sales, the unprecedented response to right-size and stabilize, and the developing domestic distrust coming from it, has seen the group's C-suite shuffled, German factory workers on strike, and pundits declaring this as potentially the beginning of the end of Volkswagen's global dominance. But perhaps most concerningly, there's a reason to believe that China is just the canary in the coal mine. The graph speaks for itself. Here's VW's market share in China. It's in free fall. And here's the market share of BYD. China's newly minted automotive behemoth. Back in 2020, its market share sat at 1.8%. Today, it's at 11%, making it not only the new largest auto company in China, but also the world's largest EV manufacturer, usurping even Tesla. BYD's explosive growth was spurred, like many things in China, by a combination of central planning and free market economics. Around 2020, Chinese government—
Bro, imagine writing a fucking thread to your friends, Stans and Lud, in 2019, predicting this, and then putting your money into fucking Neo and not BYD. Fuck! Fuck, dude! God damn it. Not even an ETF of Chinese fucking autos. So fucking stupid. Did you know about BYD? Not only did I know about BYD, I read about it and considered it, but thought I was too smart to invest in what fucking Warren Buffett invested in. I thought the Neo car was cooler and obviously would sell better, like I'm some fucking expert on car sales. And I thought that their battery swapping would be it was just fucking stupid.
So the world's largest EV manufacturer, usurping even Tesla. BYD's explosive growth was spurred, like many things in China, by a combination of central planning and free market economics. Around 2020, Chinese governments of all levels, national, provincial, and local, started rolling out a deluge of incentives for EVs and plug-in hybrids. In Shanghai, for example, the municipal government requires car buyers to first purchase a license plate as a method of restricting the number of cars hitting the road. These are sold via a monthly auction where demand always far outstrips supply. Only about 5 or 6% of bidders typically get a plate, pushing prices up to between $12,000 and $14,000. But for a number of years, EV buyers could get a license plate for free. An absolutely massive incentive, considering some Chinese EVs now cost less than a license plate in Shanghai. There's also been a litany of buyer rebates, sales tax exemptions, infrastructure funding, direct support of automakers, and more that's totaled up to an estimated $230 billion in funding for EVs by the Chinese government between 2009 and 2023. Whereas elsewhere EV incentives were merely focused on making them price competitive with internal combustion cars, in China they were often significantly cheaper, so it's no surprise their sales exploded.
Yeah.
But of course, that just explains why China transitioned to EVs so quickly, not why BYD usurped VW. The explanation for that is that, well, BYD's cars were just simply better. In recent years, VW—
Windover, I've heard enough, okay? My chat told me that's impossible. I heard someone in chat tell me that's impossible, Windover. You're fucking lying propaganda ass, woke fucking Xi Jinping bought and paid for ass, communist ass, fucking 30 days. I don't think they understand that every single one of these millions of cars that sells every year and sells more the next year explodes. They explode. And somehow people in China are just so fucking stupid. They see the car explode and they go and they buy it again. That's how they sell so many. They all explode, dude. That's the only, I've saw it on YouTube Shorts. They just keep buying these exploding fucking death trap cars. It's a 100% explode rate.
BMW's entry-level EV in the Chinese market was its ID3, which it was selling for about $23,000. This model boasts a 0 to 50 kilometer per—
Not just the Chinese do, the Australians. The Australians keep buying BYD cars, and they keep exploding. They keep buying more of them. They can buy other brands, but for some reason, they just love the exploding ones.
Hour time of 3 seconds and a certified range of 450 kilometers. In the US or Europe, this would seem like a steal relative to other EVs, but in China, for half that price, about $11,800, a buyer could instead get the upper trim of the entry-level BYD EV, the Seagull. This has a slower 4.9 seconds 0 to 50 kilometer time and a shorter 405 kilometer range, but it's not too far off. And there are plenty of other BYD EVs selling for well below the ID3's price, yet boasting better specs. The BYD Dolphin Night version has 520 kilometers of range, yet sells for under $18,000, for example. And the Volkswagen Group isn't doing much better on the other end of the spectrum either. The group's two primary luxury brands, Audi and Porsche, are each struggling as well. Audi sold fewer than 15,000 EVs to China in the first 9 months of 2024, and Porsche sales are in such freefall that the company is closing a third of their dealerships in the country. There is a market for higher-end Western EVs in China, but that market has been absolutely dominated by Tesla. The company convinced the government to allow them to build their own dedicated factory in China. The first time ever a foreign auto company has been allowed to enter the Chinese market outright, not as part of a joint venture with a Chinese firm. Now, Western brands typically are able to command a price premium in China. They're often viewed as luxury goods. VW doesn't necessarily need to beat its Chinese competitors on price for equivalently spec'd cars, as historically consumers have perceived the Western brands as just simply better. Until recently, that is. Even if the ID.3 or other VW EVs might match or beat BYD equivalents on range or acceleration or charging time, the day-to-day experience of owning a VW EV is reportedly just worse. They lose in the details, and nowhere is that more true than with software. Now, up until the 2010s really, car manufacturing was largely an exercise in industrial expertise, with companies—
There's also in that book Kaput, I've been reading about the German economy and German problems, and it's like, not necessarily among the youngest Germans, but among like the older parts of German society, there's such a deep reluctance towards technology, towards digital, towards software and the internet, and Germany is very old school on this stuff. Yeah, Japan, similar. Yeah, it applies here, where it's just like, that is now becoming more and more important to consumers, and if you're not good at it, they will just pick somewhere else.
Like Toyota, Volkswagen, and General Motors vying for the world #1 spot in total sales on account of their ability to produce durable, dependable, fixable hardware. Then came Tesla, Apple CarPlay, lane assist, heads-up displays, and a myriad of other features running from safety to in-car entertainment that required cars capable of computing. Suddenly, a software revolution. For legacy car makers, such rapid change was jarring, but ultimately was such that they could at least keep up with through outsourcing to smaller, more nimble software companies. Making revolution more manageable too was the fact that internal combustion engine cars simply don't require the same level of software sophistication as an electric vehicle. A touchscreen infotainment system doesn't necessarily need to interact with or be aware of a lane assist or automatic braking safety feature, for instance. So to keep up, Volkswagen at first went the route of other legacy car makers. Contract out the software, focus on their core competency, the hardware. But that changed in 2015 with Dieselgate, the scandal involving an emissions control system designed to fraudulently manipulate the results of emissions tests. As part of the ensuing legal settlement, the company invested $2 billion into building out the Electrify America brand of EV fast chargers in North America, and then $40 billion into their EV program. And as for the software that ran those EVs, and their entire fleet of vehicles for that matter, well, VW was going to do that too. In 2019, the company announced that they'd no longer look for software suppliers, but they'd be one. No longer would they mirror the strategy of other legacy automakers. They'd take the Tesla route. They'd be a car company and a tech company.
It's hard.
The vision was straightforward enough. They'd radically simplify, and there would no longer be any black boxes that the company itself couldn't understand under their hoods. Each of their cars, leadership noted, were using some 70 separate computers, and across VW Group's brands, there were 8 separate software architectures. Now the company wanted to cut those numbers to 3 computers per car and 1 operating system across the entire group. While the concept was simple, the undertaking was massive, as VW Group didn't even have a built-out software branch. So they started from the ground floor, founding a software and technology company now called Kariad here, outside of Munich at an Audi plant, with a host of additional offices extending as far as Seattle to house its 3,000 new employees. Now, no Volkswagen brand would have to rely on outside software. They'd have one in-house operating system.
They hired a bunch of college grads who don't know how to code? Is that real? I mean, it would probably be tough, right, to get a bunch of developed software engineers in Germany, because they would go if you're a good software engineer in Germany, you go somewhere else.
Serving their purposes alone, just as soon as they built it. This was a first, a legacy car manufacturer so boldly embracing software. GM hadn't made such a move, neither had Ford, nor Toyota, nor had Honda or Hyundai. Neither had even Tesla, who shared the most similar approach to software, as Tesla from its founding was a software developer, making software a core competency from the beginning. But the problems were immediate. While Volkswagen was able to begin delivering certain trims of its first modern electric vehicle, the ID.3, in China and Europe nearly on time, the buyers were asked to patiently wait for software updates before their infotainment systems and heads-up displays would be fully operational. For the company's first electric car release in the much-anticipated ID series, it was a massive blunder, as Reddit and YouTube became replete with ID.3 rants and painful summaries.
Yeah, I mean, you buy the fucking car and your shit doesn't work. That's so stupid. Of course everyone's going to complain. Then you get a bad brand off the rip and then no one cares about your EVs. You can't turn your humans into your beta testers. Yeah, it's like a AAA game. Yeah, exactly. It's like released unfinished and then everyone's pissed about it.
Software snafus. Making matters worse, in the same year, software difficulties also delayed the release of the popular VW Golf, as the company simply couldn't ensure network safety in some markets for over-the-air updates. While the launch of the electric ID.4 in North America went a bit smoother, software soon proved the vehicle's Achilles heel, as about a third of recall notices on the vehicle could be attributed to software problems. Unfortunately for the VW group, Kariad's issues were more structural than simply stumbling out of the starting blocks. Issues for the ID group are largely attributed to Kariad's most rudimentary product, E3 1.1, the platform designed for the group's mass-market EVs. But Kariad in 2019 was also tasked with the concurrent development of two other platforms, E3 1.2, a step up in complexity designed for higher-end EVs from the likes of Audi and Porsche, as well as E3 2.0, a software product that would usher in autonomous driving.
This is like some fucking Microsoft naming.
For the group in the late 2020s. Kariad struggled with these products too, leading to delays on Porsche's EV Macan and more recently Audi's Q8 e-tron, once again on account of software. While Bentley, counting on E3 2.0 to usher the brand into its EV era, has already announced that its full transition away from internal combustion isn't likely until the mid-2030s, in part because of uncertainty over whether Kariad can deliver a reliable product. From the beginning, Kariad was founded to become a central strength of the group, so it's been central in both near and long-term product roadmaps. And because it has failed so spectacularly up until this point, it's left the entire group, from mass market to luxury, in a state of uncertainty. And beyond the operational implications, the end result is still not what it needs to be. Anecdotally, the reviews indicate that while VW software might be improving, it's still far behind that of BYD or.
I wonder why it's so fucking hard. It probably just has to be, like, the challenge doesn't seem that hard. It's probably politics. It's probably like internal organization and leadership and like the ability of like good ideas from software engineers to get through leadership. It's probably fucking an organizational problem. It can't be that hard to fucking, they're solving code problems that have already been solved by other car companies. They can fucking steal it. They can copy it. They're just heavily siloed. They try to piece the software together. Yeah. Okay.
Tesla. So now the company is in damage limitation mode. Along with the factory shutdowns, it's aiming to cut pay by 10% across the board and has already finalized a plan to do so with managerial staff, largely through a reduction in bonuses. To avoid further factory closures and pay cuts, though, the company needs to make some bold moves. It's starting by trying to find the next China, and VW believes one prime emerging market opportunity is here in Brazil. This is, in fact, where VW opened its first international factory in the 1950s, and today boasts 4 factories, but the company still believes there's more juice to be squeezed. It's aiming for 40% market growth by 2027 by introducing 15 new electric and flex fuel models to Brazil. At the end of the day, though, VW still thinks it can—
What the fuck is this? Like a— why are people hugging and crying at a VW announcement in Brazil?
And flex fuel models to Brazil. At the end of the day, though, VW still thinks it can salvage the Chinese market. All they need to do is follow the lead of the new market leaders. After plenty of public rhetoric on how they won't get coaxed into a price war with the Chinese manufacturers, VW has been coaxed into a price war with the Chinese manufacturers and dropped prices across its lineup to build back market share.
Bro, Tesla did the same thing. Everyone was like, nah, we're not cutting prices. Nah, we're not fucking doing it. And then everyone in China cut prices. They're like, well, no one's buying our cars anymore. If all your competitors are fucking cheaper than you, you have to fucking cut prices, but it's the way it fucking works. It's how competition works. That's why we need more competition here in America for things. Because then no matter what you fucking say, you have to do it. You have to make things cheaper because your competitor's going to eat your lunch. This works.
Share. Recently, it also introduced the ID code concept, a fully electric vehicle equipped for fully autonomous driving, developed specifically for the Chinese market with the kind of techie, futuristic features that have helped propel BYD sales. This includes a self-cleaning mode where the car uses UV light to purify the air, and a built-in robot vacuum cleaner to clean surfaces.
What?
VW also took a 4.99% ownership stake in Chinese EV startup XPeng. By collaborating with an established in-market brand, Volkswagen says it will cut production time by 30% and production costs by 40% on the two models it plans to introduce with XPeng in 2026. But ultimately, if VW EVs are going to be competitive anywhere, they're going to have to get good at software. In July, Volkswagen announced a joint venture with American EV darling Rivian, known for breaching the SUV and recreational vehicle market. The initial $1 billion investment will be followed by another $4.8 billion in the next several years, all dedicated to research and development and the integration of Rivian software into Volkswagen vehicles, set to launch by 2027. Rivian pioneered what's called zonal architecture, basically splitting up a car's network to reduce wiring and hardware and its interdependence on other systems, and the plans are to implement it first into Volkswagen's luxury brands, Porsche, Audi, and eventually downmarket to VW vehicles themselves. The transition towards electric vehicles has been a difficult moment for the old guard of the auto industry. Few would have predicted that a Silicon Valley startup could explode into the world's most valuable auto company, but then Tesla did. The incumbent manufacturers eventually took this threat seriously, recognizing that it's now only a question of how long the transition towards EV takes, not whether it'll happen. But suddenly BYD has become, effectively, the second Tesla. The second EV manufacturer to achieve explosive growth. And unlike in the case of Tesla and the West, as BYD rose, so too did a litany of other smaller Chinese EV manufacturers. It's a far more diversified market than was seen in the US and Europe during the big growth years of Tesla. That's to say, the challenge to the incumbents this time is even stronger. Perhaps the one upside for Volkswagen is that it's having to confront this challenge now. Chinese EV manufacturers are just starting to ramp up exports. The cost of these EVs is just so much lower than competitors that they're sure to quickly entrench in markets around the world. In response, the EU set tariffs that cut into this cost advantage, alleging that the prices are made possible by significant government subsidies. The US, under similar logic, set a 100% tariff, making it effectively impossible for Chinese auto companies.
I want my fucking Xiaomi SU7, you old fuck! Finally, we're gonna get a new president who doesn't care about tariffs. Donald J. Trump. He's gonna get into office and he's not gonna do your stupid fucking tariffs. He's gonna bring down that tariff wall and he's gonna let me get the EV that I want. Trump!
To compete in the markets. But tariffs are not a wall, they're just a hurdle. And with time, the Chinese...
That was a funny time for me to call it a tariff wall. Bro heard me. Bro heard me and responded.
The Chinese companies will find a way. Already, BYD is pivoting its Europe strategy to hybrids, as these are not covered by the tariffs. VW, one could say, has the opportunity to figure out how to meaningfully compete against Chinese EVs in China before they have to do so across the globe. All the other auto companies, without as significant a China presence, are not facing these same challenges, so they're not able to put their products to the test in the same way. On the outside, EVs look like cars. They are, of course, and in many cases their bodies are identical to those of gas-powered equivalents. But what makes this industry transition so tumultuous is that, on the inside, the factors that influence competency in EV design and manufacturing are so fundamentally different than those that went into internal combustion cars. Over a century of institutional knowledge within companies like VW is now almost worthless. Perhaps the biggest value they retain is just their brand. There's every reason to believe that successful internal combustion vehicle manufacturers won't turn into successful EV manufacturers. The task ahead for VW and other incumbent car manufacturers is...
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying Blockbuster would make a great streaming company. It's like they were really good at making a store you could buy movies or rent movies. They were not good at like setting up software and getting the negotiations to get everything, you know what I'm saying, to get everything online. It's just a different skill set. You're not good at it. And I think a lot of legacy car companies are running into this.
So tremendous that, looking back in the decades to come, the ones that make it will perhaps be more remarkable than the ones that don't. China is fascinating. I never get tired of trying to understand the ways in which this nascent superpower is increasingly affecting the entire world. And clearly, if you've made it to this point in the video, you're on the same page.
Yep.
That's why I'd recommend you watch Polymatter's series, China Actually. It's a Nebula original that attempts to dive deep into how the country actually works. For example, you've heard about Chinese censorship, or their one-child policy, or their elimination of poverty, and you probably remember the surface-level explanation for each of these, but do you really, truly understand each on a nitty-gritty level? That's what China Actually is for. It's a really interesting show, and this is just one example of Nebula-exclusive content that's worth watching. As you probably know by now, Nebula is a streaming service started by digital...
This is a cool ad. It's a little long, but I might buy this. So there's the ad for you. I might buy this. How can China invest so much in EV, solar, and other domestic industry without having ballooning interest payments or crazy inflation? Why can't the U.S. copy their strat? Well, I mean, you heard that video. They said China's EV subsidies amounted to like $290 billion over 10 years. That's nothing. We just got to focus it in the right areas. $290 billion, and we pissed that money in America. We're talking, we do 7-8 trillion. It's not the amount of money. Now, again, China has a massive debt problem too, but it's for different things. It's for like real estate manufacturing and bridges and fucking high-speed rail and airports. And they got massive, massive, massive local government debt. But it's not for EV subsidies. It's a drop in the bucket.